it was just this powerful voice. And it did not occur to me at all to even question it. It didn't seem weird. And the voice came through to me, and the voice said that my daughter was going to be okay, to not worry, to be at peace, and that I needed to take care of myself because she was going to need me.
Welcome to When You Look, where ordinary people share their extraordinary experiences, and you get to decide, was it coincidence or God? Kat, thanks so much for coming on When You Look. Really, really great to have you here, truly.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be a part of your podcast.
Well, really appreciate you being on and sharing your story. We're excited to hear that. But before we get there, our listeners want to know a little bit more about you. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, I would love to. So my name is Kat Artemis, and I am a positive mindset coach and an author of the book, A New Way to Think About Thinking. I live in Columbus, Ohio. I have 2 grown children, 23 and 26, and I'm a dog mom of 2 golden doodle rescues.
Awesome. Well, thanks a bunch again for coming on. Super excited to hear your whole story. But as you do that, give us a little bit of the backstory so we understand everything kind of leading up to sort of a string of really neat events, and then walk us through all of it as it occurred for you.
Yes, I would love to. So this occurred in 2002, so 23 years ago, actually 23 years ago on March 27th, the day my daughter was born. And I had, it was my second pregnancy. I had a 3-year-old son. My husband at the time was working out of town, so I was home a lot alone, 4 days a week with my 3-year-old and my baby that I was cooking. And, I was really excited to have this baby, and I wanted to do everything differently this time. So, differently from the first time. So I decided to have a natural birth. I didn't want any intervention. And I wanted to have a nurse midwife help me with the birth. So the only thing I didn't do was do it at home. So there's a hospital here in Columbus, Ohio that allows that. So that's the route I took. During my pregnancy, I was pretty big. I gained a lot of weight, and I was pretty uncomfortable. So that's kind of like, leading up to it, I was already kind of carrying a big baby clearly, and, excited for the birth of my daughter. And, I had pretty normal birth, I should say, with my son. So I expected nothing less. So I went into labor. I didn't go into labor. My water broke, and I waited to go into labor. And about 10 hours later, I still hadn't gone into labor. So I went to the hospital. It was late at night, and my midwife was there, my mom and my husband. We're all there gathered around. I'm still thinking, I'm just going to give birth. It's going to hurt and it will be fine. But what happened was, I was unable to really push her out. And we didn't realize, how big of a baby she was. My son was 8'13". So we thought it would probably be around that. And, what happens a lot of times in these situations is when the baby is engaged, they can't then go in and do the C-section. So I had no choice but to get her out of my body. And I remember the room starting to feel kind of panicky, because we had to get her out, So anyway, a lot of times in those situations, what happens is a nurse or someone else in the room will push down on the stomach and force that baby out. And when the baby's big, it's not uncommon for the baby to come out with like a broken collarbone, or maybe like nerve damage, or stretched nerves. And so that's kind of the lesser of two evils, because if you leave the baby in, obviously that could create catastrophic, effects on the baby.
Yeah.
So that's what had to happen. So the baby, my daughter, Sophia, was born, and she came out 10 pounds 6 ounces and 23 inches long. And I remember feeling really delirious, and hearing that and thinking like, what is she? She's giant. And the funny thing is she wasn't fat at all because she was just so long,
Mhm.
and it was wild. I remember thinking that can't be right, but I was in such a delirious state that I knew I needed to ask on that later, but that was the truth. Um, she was gray and she really wasn't making a lot of noise. And her APGAR score was really low. And she had this like rapid breathing, and I could tell by the feeling in the room that we weren't celebrating right then. As tired and delirious as I was from naturally birthing a 10-pound, 6-ounce baby, I knew that there was a lot of concern like hanging in the room. And I didn't know what. And so they let me hold her for a quick second. And then they told me that they needed to take her and put her in NICU and put her under like an oxygen hood. And there wasn't really like, it wasn't overly alarming. Like, they were concerned, but not alarmed. So we're going to
Okay.
take her, we're going to put her under this hood, and then you'll be able to hold her later. Um, so I felt okay with that. Like I was sad that I didn't get to hold her, but, um, I also knew that they were going to bring her back to me. So, my husband and my mother decided to go on home because they were going to keep the baby in NICU. I was out of my mind. Had all been up. It had been so stressful, and I was okay with that. Like I needed to pass out. So that's what we did. Um, so a few hours later, I was awake. I was in my bed. I was waiting for them to bring me my baby, and a doctor came in instead. And I remember it like it was yesterday because he like walked right in the door, but he didn't come up to my bed. He just walked in and stood there, like right in the like not quite in the doorway, but like a step in. And
Hmm.
and I was like, "Yeah, can I help you?" And he said, "Yeah, I wanted to let you know that there's something going on with your daughter. There's something wrong with her." And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Well, anytime we try to move her at all, she just starts crying and she turns like this deep, dusky rose color and she quits breathing. And we don't know what that is." And he said, "We got to do a CAT scan and we have to do some other tests and probably a spinal tap. And we got to figure it out." And so I started to panic and I started to cry. And here I am. I just had a baby and now this is happening. And so I said, "Well, is she going to die?" And he was like, "No, no," kind of like, "Ugh." He goes, "But she could have cerebral palsy. It could be a multitude of things. And we just don't know what it is." And I could tell that he had concern, maybe alarm in his voice.
Hmm.
And I I felt so powerless in that moment. So of course I said, "Yeah, do what you have to do. Do the CAT scan, do the spinal tap." And I was so scared and so upset that I couldn't be with her. And so I decided, like, I was crying, I was emotional, I was terrified. And so I decided to call my husband. Um, you know, get him to the hospital immediately, let him know what's going on, and he didn't answer. And he had my son with them. They were sleeping. This was literally a few hours after we had been up all night, and they weren't expecting, he wasn't expecting a call. So then I called my mom. My son had been with my dad until my husband picked him up. So they were also napping. So then I called my sister. Still no answer. So there I was in my hospital bed, um, terrified, thinking the worst, like spiraling down completely, thinking everything that could go wrong. Suddenly I'm in the what if stage and
Mhm.
going out into the future and thinking like I was just terrified. And I remembered I was going to try not to cry, but I'm crying. I remembered that I had read somewhere um, that uh, God hears a mother's prayer and prioritizes it. And I decided that I needed to hold on to that. And I don't know where I heard that. It just like came into my mind. Somewhere I had read it or somewhere I had heard it, and I didn't even know if it was true. I didn't know God at the time at all, but I decided to surrender to that and believe it. And
Hmm.
so I started to pray. And I mean pray like I'd never prayed before, completely surrendered. I didn't know what to say, so I was just kind of babbling, needing help. I was asking God to heal my daughter, I was asking him to bring us peace. Um, I just felt like I was in the middle of a storm and everything was just chaotic in my mind. Um, yeah, I was feeling just terrified. And so uh, I'm praying and I'm praying. And suddenly, like out of nowhere, I heard a voice. Like an actual voice, as clear as my voice is to you, as clear as yours is to me. I heard a voice. And for some reason that did not seem weird to me at all. Like I it was the like most powerful thing. It was just this powerful voice and it did not occur to me at all to even question it. It didn't seem weird and the voice came through to me and the voice said that my daughter was going to be okay, to not worry, to be at peace, and that I needed to take care of myself because she was going to need me. And that was so like if you said that to me right now about any little thing going on in my life, I would probably say, Mick, yeah, thanks. Thanks for that. But,
Right. Yeah.
right? But this was so powerful that I was like enveloped in this peace. I don't even know how to describe it. I'm a high strung person. Like I'm not chill. So like to be completely enveloped in something like that and to feel like there's nothing else in the world but those words that were told to me, like that in and of itself was like just to me looking back on it now is just unbelievable. And I didn't question it. And like here's the thing, I wasn't close to God at the time. So I knew about God, but I didn't have a personal relationship with God and I had never prayed to Jesus at that point at all. So I wasn't like I was relying and surrendered to something that I didn't even know was true. But in that moment, everything was so powerful that I didn't question it at all. And I I sat there after it was over and I immediately stopped crying. Like I immediately was enveloped in peace. There wasn't like a coming down, like where I had to talk myself down, like start rationalizing, well, you heard this voice and it's going to be okay now. It was none of that. It was so clear and it was like put in me. I don't even know how else to describe it. Like it was put in me this confidence and peace. And I knew for sure I was going to be okay. So, and I knew for sure, sorry, that my daughter was going to be okay. And consequently, I would be okay. And so I called my midwife and I said, hey, like, I need to go home and get some sleep. And she was like, what?
Yeah.
And I said, I need to be here for my daughter. I need all my strength. I'm not allowed to hold her. I'm not allowed to go into NICU with her. They're celebrating down the hall. Everybody else is celebrating their babies and I can't. And I can't be here. If I'm going to feel better, I can't be here. And she thought I was crazy. And I mean, I would too, like if somebody told me that today and this is probably TMI, but my placenta did not deliver after I had my daughter. So she had to rip it out, which was horrific. But my daughter was afraid, or my doctor was afraid that I was going to hemorrhage, like if something was left in there. And she was like, you should not leave. Like, we need to keep an eye on you. You need to have the antibiotic IV going. And I said, no, I absolutely am not going to hemorrhage. I know I will be fine. Like, I know what I need to do here. Well, she was a Christian. And so she finally relented because she knew that I was going to leave. I mean, I was going to leave one
way or another, it sounds like.
Yeah. And so she said, I want to pray with you. And then I'm going to send you home with a pill in case you start hemorrhaging. You need to take it. I'm like, that's fine. I don't care. Whatever. I'm leaving. So we prayed. And then at 7 p.m. that night, I finally was discharged. And so that was 12 hours after I delivered a 12-pound, 10-pound, 6-ounce baby, 23 inches long, naturally. And so I went home, and you would think like I would go home and, I'd be up all night and I'd be worried, but I wasn't. That feeling from being in the hospital bed, that voice was still with me. So I went home and I slept all night. Like, I slept the entire night. I woke up at like 4 or 5, whatever early time. And I went back to the hospital and I did feel better. Like, I hadn't slept, I think, in like 6 months. Like, I was huge. Like I said, I'd gained 60 pounds. And my daughter clearly was huge. I was carrying like, my daughter was like the size of what some people carry as twins, but we didn't know that. I wasn't measuring that big. So it's no wonder, but I was, I was really uncomfortable for all those months. And so to go home and sleep all night and not be worried. And when I woke up the next day, I went back to the hospital and I still wasn't worried. Like, that feeling of peace, I didn't even have to trust it. It was just so in me. The only way I can describe it is there was like maybe like a bubble around me that just enveloped me. That's the only way I can describe it. My rational mind, which is usually on overload, was not part of the discussion.
Wow.
So I get to the hospital the next morning and she's a little bit better. I'm able to hold her. And her arm was not working at all. It was just hanging at her side. But we really weren't talking about her arm. We were talking about whatever it was that caused her to quit breathing so many times in a row. Not rapid breathing, but you move her even a little bit and she cries, turns red, and quits breathing. So that was the thing. They were not even really thinking about her arm at the time. But the breathing situation took care of itself. Like, over the course of the next 7 days, she got better and better. And it's like it didn't happen. So on the day after Easter, which was 7 days later, we got to bring her home. She was so battered. Her face was still bruised. Her little eyes were still swollen. She had little pricks all over her body from where she had been, pricked with like IVs, and her little spinal tap and like all those things. Like, she was just so battered, but she was home. Her little arm was still hanging. And they say that like babies should have like a startle reflex where they're like, where you kind of like go like just a little bit, not drop them, but like, like half an inch. Their little arm should shoot up. And her arm didn't. Like, it just didn't, like, it was completely paralyzed. But we thought, well, maybe it's just the like a little bit of like where the nerves get stretched. And that usually heals itself. So they gave us the name of a neurosurgeon at Children's Hospital. A month after we got home or whatever, we took her in and they did an EMG to test her nerves and a CAT scan. And they both showed that it wasn't nerve damage. It was severed nerves. Like, her nerves were severed. They weren't torn. I mean, they were torn off, they were severed.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they, like I said, they get stretched and they will heal from that, but they don't always heal perfectly either. So some people, some babies will. We were in the waiting room and there were toddlers all over this waiting room that had paralyzed arms. And so it typically happens to big babies. And, there's a blessing that they're still with us, right? So, like, I get
Absolutely.
that. But still, your daughter's arm is paralyzed, and
Yeah.
so we we go through the EMG, we go through the CAT scan, we go see the doctor, and the doctor said the nerves are severed. This is a worst case scenario. They're working on, there might be a way to do a nerve graft when she's like 3 or when she's a little older. Here's what you could expect, but there isn't a lot that we can do. But we're keeping an eye on her, just that normal stuff. But there isn't a lot that you can do when nerves are torn or severed. Excuse me. Um, so I still wasn't. Was still in that bubble. Somehow I'm still in the bubble. Like I didn't go home and like fret. I didn't stay up all night. My husband and I didn't, you know, ruminate on it. Like I believed, like I had enough belief for both of us and everyone around me. Like, and it wasn't even like I would have to correct people if they said, like, I was just like, no, it's fine. Like she's going to be okay. Like I was told she would be okay and I 100% know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, we lived on this cul-de-sac and like it's funny because most of the people that lived on this cul-de-sac were Christians and they were all praying. And they had us all on prayer lists and things like that too, which I thought, was amazing. So anyway, I bring her home and I had read this book some time before I got pregnant with her. I couldn't even tell you when. And I was fascinated by people that lay hands on healing. So I had read this book about it at some point, and I had never done it or anything like that. I was just fascinated by it. And when I got her home from that appointment, I thought, I'm going to start doing that. And it was like, I don't know, like, it sounds so crazy to say, but it was like given to me, like, this is what you do. You read it. So I would take off her little onesie and I would lay my hands on her. And I just imagined, like, I didn't know what to do. So I just, like, this is not
You're
me.
new to it. Yeah.
I'm way new to this stuff. And nobody's telling me, right? Like I'm literally getting these downloads. And so I put my hands on her little shoulder um and I just started imagining like God's like healing energy, like this blue healing energy and like this beautiful sparkly blue energy from God coming through me and through my hands onto my daughter. And it felt right and my hands felt tingly and it all sounds like wild when I tell it now, but this actually like was an experience and like I knew that something was happening. I knew that it was happening. And I was not questioning. So I did that probably 3 or 4 times a day. We'd just be laying together and then I would just do it. And yeah, just whenever I could. Like I didn't know how often I should do it. And so I just did it as much as I thought I should, and I felt that it was working. Like somehow, like I didn't see any difference. Her arm was still paralyzed, but something in me just kept saying, keep doing this and just keep doing it. And I wasn't focused on it not working either, which I think is interesting because, now if I'm trying to pray about something or I'm asking God, like I'm noticing that it's not here.
Right.
Like I can focus on lack, but I didn't do that at the time. And every now and then, like a couple of times we thought we saw a flicker in her wrist, but we weren't sure. And then one day, I was on the phone in my kitchen and eating area and living room is just like one long room. And so she was in the living room in her swing and she was facing away from me and she's just swinging along. And all of a sudden her little arm, it was her right arm, blew up over her head, just like this, like just out of nowhere. And I was like, oh my God, Sophie's
Yeah.
arm just moved. And I like hung up the phone right away and I went over and like, then she was just moving it like she had always moved it. Like then she's just like
Wow.
moving it around. It wasn't like weak, like she could pick stuff up. Like her fingers were, it was just like it had always worked.
Wow.
I know. And I was like, oh my God. So I called Dr. Elton, her doctor, and he said, well, let's get her in for another EMG and a CAT scan. I'm like, okay. So we get her in. We go do that. No, she's 4 months old at the time. And so we do the EMG and there were 3 people in there and I don't really even know who they were or what they did, but they're in there with her and they have her results, right? They knew she had severed nerves and they came out and they said, I will never forget this. Not only is there no evidence of any severed nerves, but your daughter is right-handed. I was like, what? Yeah. And I thought that was like, I didn't know a lot about EMGs at the time. So I didn't know that you could like test that and see the strength and all of that
Right.
different kind of stuff. But it was like shocking. But I knew she was healed, but the fact that they said that, we were like, oh my gosh. So then we go up to the CAT scan and they, put them in this, put babies in this little thing and then put them in the big giant tube and it's loud. So I sat and they like give them the solution of like sugar and something else on their binky to suck on to like make them calm. And so I sat in the corner of the room and watched her like little body go in. And they did that. And then they brought her out. And like she's at this point now, she's missed her nap. She's getting jostled all around. She's exhausted. So she goes to sleep when we put her back in the stroller. Then we go down to Dr. Elton's office, the neurosurgeon, go in to see him. He tells us the results and he said, yeah, there's no damage at all. And he's completely confounded, doesn't understand how that can be. I knew there was no damage. Like I knew she was fine. I was told she would be fine and I never questioned it. And so anyway, she was fine. He couldn't get her awake though. So he couldn't see her move her arm. And,
Mm.
I could appreciate if I was the doctor, I would be like, yeah, but let me see, because she could have been healed in my eyes, but then have lasting issues or not a full range of
Yeah.
motion. Like there's so many things that like if you use your rational brain that could have happened. But I was just like, no, she's fine. So he said, make an appointment on your way out. And I go, okay. And I left his office and I walked right past the place where you make appointments, that lady. And I just kept right on going. I looked at my husband, I'm like, we're leaving. And we left. And I never did make an appointment and I never even questioned it. Like her arm was 100% fine. And not only that, but my daughter, she's she's really tall. I mean, to me anyway, because I'm 5'5". She's like 5'8", 5'9", and she is such an athlete. Like she's like an incredible athlete. She was a really good basketball player in high school. Getting in the newspaper all the time and all that. She's a second degree black belt in Taekwondo. She was a soccer goalkeeper when she was little, like all the things, and that arm never got in her way. And um, I've told this story a few times to people that, she's played sports with just because I look at her and I think, wow, like she's an amazing athlete. And yet her arm wasn't supposed to work and God healed her.
Right.
It's like incredible. Yeah.
Wow. Kat, so much there. Really, really, truly. Oh man. Let's explore a little bit more of that desperation that you were
Mm,
alluding to and describing, being in that hospital room
yeah.
and you're all alone. Nobody's answering their phones.
Oh, it's
And then you gotta take it from there. Yeah. Like tell us a little bit more about.
yeah, that feeling of When I say I was terrified, like I really was. So I wasn't an emotionally mature 32-year-old. So let's just put that out there. I wasn't like I know people in their 30s now and I'm like, where was I? Like why am I not like that? Why wasn't I? But I wasn't. I had a lot of trauma in my life up to that point. A lot of emotional trauma too and so I didn't learn like how to like kind of work my way through like a major issue like that because I had so many problems up to that point. And so when that happened, like there I didn't have the skill set like say that I might have now to pause and say, well, let me ask you some questions. I'm going to hold my baby and then we're going to talk through this. We're not going to rush into anything. Like that was not that that's 55-year-old Kat. That it was not 32-year-old Kat. And so when that happened, I felt I felt this immense fear. And fear is kind of like if the enemy is going to do something to me, the enemy is going to make me afraid. Like that's my trigger for me personally. Like I know other people have other things, but for me it's fear-based thinking is really like that's the thing that gets me. I've worked on that for a long time. So at that moment, I was deep in fear. And I wasn't just afraid for my daughter in that moment. Like I was afraid, like I spiraled down. I'm a catastrophic thinker. I always say I'm a catastrophic thinker. I was made that way. I don't have to be that way. So now I know how to spiral up, but I didn't 23 years ago know how. So I went deep and I went to the worst of the worst. Like my daughter might die. My daughter might not ever be able to, like maybe she won't ever be able to communicate with me. Maybe,
Right.
you just don't know. And
Mm.
so I was in this dark, dark place, like when I think of darkness, like I think of like this oppressive feeling of like, you don't know any way out. You feel helpless. It feels like, um, terrifying. That's how I felt.
Right.
I did not have any rational thoughts. And so that's where I was emotionally. So, and plus being alone in that situation and, I'm always with people. So, to be alone in the situation, not be able to like, look at your partner, your husband at the time or, whatever and say, okay, what are we going to do? Like there was no calming voice. And so I wasn't a true leader in my own life. I don't think at that time either. So like everything just happened to me, and so I felt really powerless. And that's really all. I mean, the fear was probably the worst part. And in the darkness. And then, yeah, and then I just like right in the middle of that where my mind was just going crazy is when I had that thought, like God hears a mother's prayer. And like, I know I'm not saying it right, but like, it was like God hears a mother's prayer and prioritizes it. Kind of like he hears
Yeah.
that first kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like he's getting those right now. When those go up, he's grabbing those. Like, I don't know what I thought. I just knew that I had heard that somewhere. And I was
Hmm.
like, and so I was like, okay, if that's true, I'm going to do that right now. If that's true, I'm doing that right now. And like, I just did it. Like, I felt like, well, this sounds sad, but like, it was like my last resort. I tried my husband, I tried my sister, I tried my mom and dad. But now, so when I started to come through that though and get to know Jesus and build my relationship with God, I started to realize like that was necessary for me. Like when God shuts everyone out of your life, you become closer to God. I mean, not everybody, but I did, right? Like if there's nobody else to go to and God wants your attention, then that's a good way for you to like listen.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I that's just kind of how I see it now. And so when all that happened, I found that voice I found my voice to ask and I found surrender, which I didn't know I was like, I didn't, like, there was no logic happening. It's not like I said, I'm surrendering, but I did surrender because I didn't have any other choice but to go to the Almighty and say, I need help. I am desperate for help. I need this. I need you.
Yeah.
And then he talked to me, and that it wasn't special, and I didn't feel, now I know that God thinks we're all special, so don't get me wrong. But he knows every hair on our head.
Mhm.
But I I don't know. I felt very much like um I was all I was completely enveloped in his peace. So
Yeah.
it was amazing.
Yeah, because you described that with the bubble
Yes.
and a term that you used was knowing. I knew
Yes.
I
I
was at
had a
peace.
knowing.
I was in this bubble.
Yes. Yes. I had a knowing. Um, I had peace. I felt confident in his words. I felt
Mm,
confident in what he told me, and I did not question it. And that confidence stayed with me. It didn't go away. Um, it stayed with me through the whole thing. Like it's amazing to me.
yeah. Wow. Well, Sophie, it sounds like is in her 20s. She's had a lifetime now for her at least, with an arm that works wonderfully and has had lots of athletic endeavors. But tell us a little bit more for you in terms of what happened sort of afterwards. When you walk out, you bypass the appointment booth and you say, "Hey, we're good. We're out of here because I know
Yeah.
she's healed." What was sort of like life like after that
Yeah.
for you personally?
Yeah. So that really started my journey to getting to know God. Like after that, I was so grateful. I started praying all the time, and praying like I was new at it, but just talking to God. And um, I started doing some volunteer work at the Ronald McDonald House. And I just started to lean into that relationship. And then it wasn't long after that, probably within a year, is when I started praying specifically to Jesus. And then I had friends that, like, people just started showing up in my life that led me to different Bible studies. And as soon as, like, I prayed to Jesus, if you're real, you need to show me. And I mean, that's probably not the right prayer, but that's what I said. And Jesus goes, okay, I will show you. And so I always tell people, like, if you're
Wow.
unclear, unsure, just go ahead and say a prayer to Jesus, and like, he will be there for you. So if you don't know, just say whatever, because he'll be there. And that's what happened with me anyway. And so that really started, a lifelong, now 23-year relationship with God and with Jesus.
Wow. Praise God. Praise God. Well, Kat, we usually land these conversations with two questions, and we certainly do that for all of our guests. So the first one is, and I got a pretty good sense of how you're going to respond to this one, but give us a sense, was this coincidence or God?
This was 100% God, in my opinion. I mean, every when a- any I still hold on to this 23 years later, and I just hearing that voice and then being enveloped in that bubble, like, I think coincidence could be like, oh, okay, your daughter was healed. But to me, there's so much more to it, because being enveloped in the peace, hearing the voice, the knowing, especially for someone like me who questions everything, like, there was so much more to it. In my opinion, that's why I believed it was God. Because I think otherwise I'd probably be like, yeah, it's a coincidence. I don't think that's real. So there was too much that went on over the course of a period of time too. We're talking, 4 months, so yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Well, how has your life changed as a result of all of this?
Oh my gosh. Well, I've had other experiences with God since. I've had some amazing experiences where I've called out and like desperately needed him and he's been there. Uh, Throughout these years, I feel like my life has completely transformed. So I'm not perfect at any of this and I still definitely have my down days, but at the same time, I have so much faith now and I trust God and I lean on God and he's a part of my everyday life. And there's nothing like that feeling. There's just absolutely nothing like it.
Tell us a little more about part of your everyday life. He's part of your everyday life.
Yeah. So I use prayer to guide me in my decisions. Um, God asked me to write this book in 2015 that I wrote, A New Way to Think About Thinking. And I told him no. And he said, no, yes, you will do it. And I said, no. And we argued about it until 2018 when I finally started on it. And when I wrote the book, when I finally sat down and like did my final copy, I felt like the information given to me was downloaded to me. It was an amazing experience. Like it felt like it came from God. And I have a lot of experiences like that. So I feel like my compass is is definitely, my compass is what God wants me to be doing all the time.
Yeah, fabulous. That sounds like a whole nother story. So
It's a
maybe
whole
we'll
other story for sure. Yes, yes.
so maybe we'll have you back on for another episode. But man, this one has been amazing. Thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
the story. I mean, it's what's heart wrenching as Sophie, deals with the challenges that she deals with, and as you deal with the challenges that you deal with, and the redemption that occurs here from both an
Yeah.
emotional and a spiritual and a physical state is just really, really wonderful. So thank you so much for sharing
Thank
all
you.
this. I'm confident that those that hear this will be blessed. But you mentioned the book, and give us a sense for how folks can check out the book or follow
Yeah.
you and those types of things.
So my book is A New Way to Think About Thinking by Kat Artemis. That's me. And you can get it exclusively on Amazon. And you can find more about me at directedthoughts.com. And you can follow me on my Instagram, which is directed_thoughts on Instagram. So
Awesome. Kat, true pleasure. Thanks a
thank you for
bunch.
having me. Thank you so much for letting me tell my story. Even this is God led for me. I mean, the way this even came about. So
Yeah, no doubt that the
no
backstory
doubt.
here, indicates that as such. So, yeah. Well, really a pleasure. Thank you a bunch.
Thank
We'll
you.
chat soon.
Thank you so much.
Well, there you have it. Was it coincidence or God? You decide for yourself, but I believe you just heard a story for His glory. When You Look is powered by the stories that guests share. So if you have a story to tell, let us know by going to whenyoulook.com and click on Be a Guest, or click on the link in the description below. Please subscribe to the channel, like this video, tell us what you think in the comments, and share it with somebody that will be impacted by the story. Thanks and God bless.